I'm not usually one to do one of these talking videos. I much prefer to write my thoughts. But this video I saw yesterday is so distressing that I'm finding it hard to write what I feel about it. It's a video about a father beating his child because the boy failed his exam. Now, I'm not here to start a debate or a conversation about beating your child for or against. Instead, I'm here to talk about dyslexia and the fact that 20% of the world's population is dyslexic, but yet so few of us know about dyslexia. And I mentioned dyslexia because in this video, the father can be heard telling his son, "You don't know how to read, you don't know how to read." And then when the boy says, "I know how to read," the father proceeds to pull his hair. Anyway, not being able to read is usually the way that some dyslexics are characterized. Even though they do know how to read, they just read at a lower grade level than their peers. So for example, a child in grade 6 would read like with the fluency of a child in grade 4. And then I saw another post on a friend's page on Facebook where the boy's actual result was posted. And I saw that the only subject he got an A in was music. And dyslexics are often characterized with being very skilled in the creative field. They're critical thinkers. They have imagination like no other. They see things in the big picture. They have creative minds in general. So to me, his father saying, "You don't know how to read," and then seeing that he gets an A only in music, to me points to the fact that this boy is most likely dyslexic and his parents have no idea. Dyslexia is a language-based, I don't call it a disability, is a language-based learning difference that affects the part of the brain that processes oral language, written language, reading, which includes, of course, spelling and all that stuff. Now, that's the surface definition of dyslexia. But a dyslexic mind also has certain characteristics that do not reflect in reading. There's time management, there's organization, there's memory, short-term memory. There are many different things that come with the package. But the first identifier of a possible dyslexic mind is usually in reading, spoken language, spelling, writing, and things like that. We all had them in school growing up. I grew up in Nigeria. There was always that 1, 2, 3, the one that, we all called the Olodo of the class. In other places, maybe in the US, that would have been the Dons sitting in the back of the class with the Dons hat on. We all had names for them in different cultures. But I can attest to the fact that some dyslexics put more hard work in than anyone else when it comes to schoolwork. In secondary school, we had people who, we knew them. They studied more than anyone else. They put more time in. They were into it. But every time the results came out, for some reason, they didn't make as good a result as some of us who didn't even study half as hard as they did. So nobody can say this is about being lazy or this is about not wanting to put the work in like the dad in the video was making it sound. Education is highly tied to literacy. So anyone who struggles with literacy in general, which is not just reading, they do know how to read, comprehension, spelling. Reading is a chore for dyslexics because their mind sees the word as a picture. So instead of the phonetical breakdown of each word to try to read it, C-A-T, cat, they see C-A-T, put it in their mind as cat. If you put another word that starts with C and ends with T, it takes them, their brain is automatically going to provide cat as the answer. They now have to break it down. So it's much easier for traditional learners to read because your mind has grasped the concept of phonologically structuring each word, and the more you do it, the more you know, the more fluent you get with reading, so to say. With dyslexics, it's different. That fluency comes much later than it does in traditional learners, which is what makes most of the educational process so laborious for them. Anyway, We all had them in school, the ones we called all kinds of names. But guess who else was called names like that? Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Octavia Spencer. I'm naming. Most of them were labeled as the stupid, the dons, the olodos in class. Albert Einstein was sent home with a note on his chest telling his mom that he's so stupid he's never going to be able to be able to cope with education. Einstein. Now we know that 35 to 40% of all entrepreneurs are dyslexic, and about 40% of all self-made millionaires are dyslexic. Some people call it the dyslexic advantage, the way their brain is wired, and it gives them advantages that, traditional learners don't even have. There's a lot of science in it. There's more research to back it up. But in the sake of trying to make this video short, if 20% of the world population is dyslexic, and then you have 35 to 40% of all entrepreneurs being dyslexic, it simply means they have an advantage over the traditional learners. I'm talking about people like Charles Schwab, Walt Disney, Steven Spielberg, who just recently found out at the age of 56, I think, that he's dyslexic, and he was able to explain why he struggled so much in school. He had no idea what it was. He just knew he struggled, and he wasn't considered to be one of the bright ones in class. Oh, and dyslexia is also nicknamed the MIT disease, just because of the sheer percentage of MIT students who are actually dyslexic, including the founder of their media lab and so many others in the MIT circle. Actually, there's a company somewhere in the UK, I don't remember the name, I saw it somewhere in a book, that actively recruits dyslexics because they want to harness the power in the dyslexic mind for the projects of the future they're working on. Reading is not going to be a project of the future, neither is spelling. Our phones can do spell check and do all that stuff for us now. We have all kinds of apps that can read things to us. But what the future needs is a mind that can think and analyze things the way that dyslexic minds have been known to do. So if you see that your child is struggling, there are many things as a parent that you can do to help. First, start by having a conversation with the school. Let them know what your suspicions are. And if you have the services of an educational psychologist around you, this is what they're trained to do. Use the services of a psychologist to identify and pinpoint what it is your child is struggling with. Once you have that tool, then you're equipped to be able to help your child, not only as a parent, but also to advocate for your child with the school. Because depending on where you live, it's against the law in some places not to provide accommodations to children with different kinds of learning difference. The school is required to provide it. So, for example, some schools would provide a separate space for dyslexic children to take their test. Some schools will provide extra time for them on the test. Some schools provide them devices where they can have their work read to them. And even just, personally download on your device, on your kids' devices, apps that will read to them, apps that will turn their speech into text. There's so many accommodations that can help your child reach his or her potential. But until you identify what it is your child is struggling with, you would not be able to help appropriately. So take the first step as a parent so you can do what you can to make the academic process easier for your child. Google has all kinds of applications and settings that are specifically made for dyslexics. So the help is out there. You just need to reach out and make sure you're helping your child. And this is not a Western thing. I've seen pages on Instagram, and other places that are titled Dyslexia in Nigeria. Teachers are having conferences in different places. So don't feel like you're alone. You're not alone. You just need to open the conversation.